candid conversations, unfiltered opinions, and humor with AVP59 podcast.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's episode. I have Stacey Gonder with me. Stacey and I met last week, and we had a very interesting conversation about resilience and reinvention. So she's a founder, she's an entrepreneur, and as we know on this channel, it takes a special level of insanity to do this entrepreneur stuff. So we are going to talk about Stacey and her resilience and her special level of not giving up on herself and learning and being honest with herself that got her here. So Stacey Gonder is a founder and lead designer of by DCG Custom Creations. And we're going to get to the birth of this company and what got her here. Pull up a chair if you're in the fashion industry, you're thinking about going into the fashion industry, design of any kind. This is also for wardrobe designers. So pull out. There's a lot to learn. And even if you're just a person just looking to hear a good story of resilience and reinvention, this will be a great episode to listen to. So let's get into it. Stacey, welcome. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you for having me. It's my absolute pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have you as well. I'm very grateful you made time for us to talk. So let's talk about you, Stacey, and by DCG Custom Creation. How did you get to this journey, and what is your business about?
Yeah, for sure. The journey has been very non-linear. I started like 20 some odd years ago, 26 to be precise. I was very fortunate. I grew up as a professional dancer and was very fortunate to have a career in pretty much everything dance. And I laterally shifted into costuming more so out of necessity than survival/necessity versus like, I never had like the dream that I was like, I'm going to be this. And so I laterally shifted into costuming and did primarily custom costuming for competitive and recreational dancers, which was primarily children. And about 10 years into that, I realized this part I did see a gap in an industry where I live in Toronto, Canada, and the dance industry here is very seasonal. And so there was this gap in my revenue flow. And so at the time, I was really heavily involved in the electronic music festival here in Toronto as well. And so there was this gap in my revenue stream. And I saw that the mainstream music festival boom was starting to happen around that time. And I was like, wait a minute, like I have access to this community of people who get dressed up and like do fun festivals. And so I married the two worlds of costuming and music and started creating, and I started a second brand. So I had two brands running congruently, one that was doing costuming for kids and dance, and another that was doing like kind of custom festival wear, if you will. So I did that for about another 5 or 6 years, both things congruently, and then cue the pandemic. And that changed everything. Yeah, it changed everything including my soul. And I had this moment, and you and I talked about this last week where I had this moment where I was like, shit, like, is this it? Like, is this where it ends for me? And I'm not the type of person who, if something's going to change in my world, it's going to be because I said so, not because somebody comes along and snatches it out from my hands. And I really tried to imagine myself doing something else, and it didn't work. I was like, none of this makes sense. My goal was to make sure that when the industry reopened and things were some semblance of forward motion, that my doors would be open. And so I hung on for the better part of 3, almost 4 years, because some of the things that happened here in Canada were a little bit different than the rest of the world. And so I rebranded at that point as by Stacey G. And I brought the two brands together as one, because that was the other piece that I've really been with this over this last maybe year and a half or so. It was an actual physical representation of the dichotomy of who I am. And then I was like, wait a minute, why am I keeping these two things very satellite from each other? And I decided to integrate them together. And so thus began by Stacey G Custom Creations, which still facilitates custom costuming for competitive and recreational dancers, as well as performers of all sorts, musicians, drag artists, business owners. I like to say that whatever your stage is in your life, that's who we create for. And also people who like to make a statement as they walk through the world and maybe walk on the other side of the street from mainstream messaging. Yeah. And I talked about this too, where it's like it's been a blessing and a curse. There's been some very dark times, but also it's highlighted a lot of things in my own world that I don't know if I was pretending that I didn't know, or if I if it was too painful to know, or, insert thing here. I'm still in that exploration, but it brought me to where I am now. And not that I wasn't happy then or that I didn't love what I was doing, but it's a different version. It's a different version. And most recently, I've also started launching workshops to combine transformational mindset and emotional intelligence based leadership with style coaching and with image and brand coaching. And there's it's an interesting relationship with those two worlds. And so that's that in a nutshell.
I love it. Is an interesting but a necessary relationship with those two worlds. And I'm going to dive into not seeing a gap, however, doing something because there was something to do. When you and I talked previously, we talked about entrepreneurs usually start their businesses because they recognize a gap in the industry, whatever industry they may be a part of. However, in your case, it was very non-traditional in the sense of there was no gap, but this is where I'm finding myself and this is what I have to do. And you were such a young lady when you started that journey. And just take us back to that position where you could have done a 50 billion different things. You could have bartended, you could have
Yeah.
waitressed, you could have been a bank teller, who knows, right? Any of those things. What was it? Because you learned new skills. The point of this conversation is to highlight that within you finding yourself in a certain situation, you realize that, hey, let me learn something new, still in the area of my interest. So
Yeah.
what was that journey and that mindset at that particular age was?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great question. So when I take myself back, so the reason that I shifted laterally is that I was let go from a contract that I was performing in. I was in a stage show and very suddenly I was let go. They said that I no longer looked the way that I did when I was hired
Mm.
for the show, which was a very strange because like I'm a stereotypical physical like for a dancer, like I'm a very stereotypical body type and like look. However, I was in, a Cuban review show. And so there was just, I was like very taken aback by it. I was like, oh, okay. Like this is an interesting position for myself to be in. However, I was 20, 24, maybe 25. And two pieces. A, like I said, I had never considered doing anything else. I wasn't that person that had a backup plan. Like, these days they encourage kids that are dancing and looking at that trajectory to like put something else in place. It was the 90s. We didn't know any better.
That was the era people stayed in a job. It was normal for people to stay in one job for 30, 40, 50 years.
Yeah. So there was that piece where I was like, oh shit, like I literally don't know. I've never considered anything else. And
Yeah.
then the second piece is I was fortunate that somebody suggested to me, why don't you try something still in the realm of like arts? Like, why don't you look at stage management or wardrobe of some sort? And to this day, and I've gone back in the vault of my mind so many times, but I don't consciously saying it's costumes. Like, that's the thing, because I didn't know how to turn on a sewing machine. I had never drawn a sketch in my life, like a portfolio. What? I don't know. I was like, yeah, I had no preference. at-
Right.
And like in hindsight, when I can still remember, I was in a two bedroom apartment with like four people. And I remember sitting making a portfolio and like, I was like, I have no idea right now. I'm like, I'm just gonna do it. Uh, and I don't remember also how I found the place, like the school that I went to is the International Academy of Design. It's a private institute, which it no longer exists. And again, like I have no recollection of like making that choice. So like something drew me there.
Right.
And then the second piece is like there's something to be said, and I've said this to some coaching students also and clients, is like sometimes there's something to be said for you have to. I don't generally like have to as a way of being per se, but sometimes your options are limited. And so whichever one you choose, like commit and go. And I didn't know, again, at the time, like my mindset wasn't as developed as it is now. I think I was running on instinct for sure. A lot of instinct and a lot of Coca-Cola. I'm not sure how my stomach lining survived the 90s either, but like I got here. Yeah, running on instinct and running on like pure intuition. Like, cause like that's the universe knew something for me. And in hindsight, I think I just like stepped in and followed it. And the school that I went to, also all of the professors, it was mandatory for them to still be working actively in the industry. At the time I was like, whatever. But in hindsight, I'm like, it was so valuable because it gave us so many opportunities that again, I'm not sure exist now, or at least exist with the same accessibility where it was just like, yeah, I'm working on the Lion King at, the National Ballet here in Canada. We need extra hands. Students come. Like, I don't know that same kind of like, almost like casualness, exists today. Cause I'm 7,000 years old.
Well, bet.
Right. Yeah. And I also think that my dance training had something like, that mindset too, like the discipline, the commitment, the you just get it done. And coming through the industry as a freelancer before I opened my business. And even in the early years, I was still freelancing as a stitcher and as a wardrobe assistant and those things as I was growing the business. When I think about it, like it was a yes, of course mentality. And that's the same as when you're performing and you're creating choreography and like, it's yes, of course. And you're constantly pushing to like whatever that next thing is.
Mhm.
And, I mean, I dated a guy in the like early 2000s and he was in the military and I was telling him about my ballet training. He was like, it sounds like the military. He was like, this sounds very similar.
It's tough.
Yeah. And so I think it's instinct. It's learned behavior, but it's also instinctual. So I'm pretty sure that was how I got there.
Right. So
Yeah.
even like you mentioned you never up until that point you did not know your way around a sewing machine and you pushed through it and you found a school and you attended the school. At any point, again, I'm talking this might be a strictly generational thing now.
Sure.
At any point, did you face difficulty enough to say, maybe this is not for me, or maybe I should try something else? Or, like you said, it was kind of like, I was let go of this contract. I'm here now. I have to get this done and I have to be great at it.
I think it's the latter for sure. Cause like I was still, and like in hindsight, I'm not sure how I stayed awake for so many hours in a row. Because it was a 4-year program condensed into 18 months.
Mm.
Yeah, like when I think about the nights that we would stay in the lab drafting or doing whatever, and I was still teaching dance part-time. I was still like gigging a little bit here and there, but nothing like that was like a consistent
Mhm.
job. And I would bartend a little bit here and waitress a little bit there I don't, I don't think it ever occurred to me. There were times where it was like, it was more so how am I going to continue to do and create all of the things that supports me continuing to move this forward, food and rent and car and whatever else, those things. Because even that in hindsight too, I'm like, how did I make that happen? Yeah. So again, like the only time I'm thinking this out in real time, and the only time that I ever considered maybe this isn't for me is the pandemic. Like in all of the years, I was like, it was and I think I said this to you last week too. Like maybe there were times that I should have. It takes something very significant
Yeah.
for me to like stop and be like, wait a minute, like let's assess the situation. I have a running joke that I eat possibility for breakfast because I'm like, we're very smart human beings. Yeah, like we have a very large capacity to create. So you don't tell me we can't do this. And I think actually, now that I'm saying that out loud, ever since I was a small child, I was like, what do you mean no?
No, exactly.
What do you mean?
What do you mean?
Why? Why no? Until we've exhausted like all possibilities
That's
to
right.
create the thing, then why is it no right from the beginning? Again, like now that I'm saying, I'm thinking this out in real time, and I'm pretty sure that that's the driving force for sure. Because I'm like, I don't know. And people ask me all the time too. They're like, how did you do all of the things? And I'm like, I just tried. Like, it's very, like, at the end of the day, it's quite simple. It's like, let's just try. It might work. It might not. But at least then we know we tried. It's not just hanging out there in the air. And like how many things in our world wouldn't exist if somebody didn't just try?
Absolutely. And I think in the world of immediate gratification, people often want to see the final result even before they take the first step. They don't trust the journey. They don't trust the ability to go on the journey and complete the journey. I think that's why a lot of people fall prey to overnight success coaches or overnight success influencers, because entrepreneurship takes work. And sometimes it takes time. And it is that trusting yourself to not discount or discredit your ability in yourself and the possibilities that exist to go on that journey. And it's incredible that but a lot of those things are intrinsic. And I love to see you thinking real time and reflecting. And it's like, I've always been this way. Oh goodness, look at that. A lot of that is intrinsic. Not everybody has it. However, when you have it, you know that you have it. And for you to at a position or a time where a lot of people will crumble and fold. You were looking forward to this contract, you were excited about it, you did it for a while, only for you to get this news and get cut. A lot of people cannot handle that, but you did, and you're like, okay, how do I pivot? And you did that. And something else that you talked about, maybe when you considered it, was thinking on the long term, how do I interpret all the things that I've learned into success? And that is the one thing that is a sore point for a lot of entrepreneurs, because in a coaching procedure, in a coaching program or a schooling, whatever it is,
Yeah.
you have that hand holding moment of your mentor, your professors, or whoever. However, when you're kicked out into the real world, there's that apprehension, like, oh, sugar. I had to clean that up right quick. But, it is rough out here, right? Walk us through that first client, because you're coming, it's still in your industry, still your world, it's still dance, it's still entertainment. How did you summon that gumption to walk up to the first studio to talk to either the dancers or the studio owners about designing costume for the children, and how that blossomed and picked up?
Yeah. I was very, very fortunate
Mm.
that because I was in that world already, there were again like these lateral shifts. And I'm so like, I am gratitude when I say this, is that like I didn't have to work that hard at it. It was like I was literally in the space. And so I was teaching at a dance studio that I actually grew up at as a young person. And so the owner offered me opportunity. I remember the first set of costumes, I actually wasn't there when they tried them on. And I remember her calling me and she was like, Stacey, we can't get this kid out of her costume. And I was like, what? And in those days, there was only non-stretch sequins. And so we had put sequins like around the neckline where they stepped in and out of it. And so she got in, but then to like stretch it to get out, it didn't work. And like, I'm so grateful because I had this like playground where things could like go wrong and it was still conducive to like a progressive environment to still learn from. But fast forward, probably I'd say maybe 3 to 5 years on the long end, but within the first 5 years, again, I realized like there was a day I remember I was sitting there and I was like, oh my gosh, 90% of the people that I'm creating for right now, I don't actually have a personal relationship with. And that was the moment where I was like, I think I'm doing it. Like, I think this is working. And I had that oh shit moment too, where I was like, right, I don't know these people. And again, it was a double-edged sword because my involvement and my understanding of that industry worked to my advantage because it established immediate trust. They were like, oh, you understand the entire 360 of the consumer experience of that industry. And then on the other side, it was like, I really cared a lot about everything that I was doing. So, I would overcommit for sure, and get myself into some hot water there, just overcommitting and then being like, oh, we better work some real long hours to get this out the door. And again, like maybe it was a dash of arrogance. I don't know that again, like I was just like, I'm doing it. And whatever challenge or whatever feedback or whatever showed up, we just handled it. I do remember there were a couple of times like my mom would come help me do all the rhinestoning and things like that. And I remember there was one day in particular, I was just sitting looking at all the cut pieces in my studio and like the piles of things that still needed to be done and like all the billing and like all the stuff. And I just started to cry. And I was like, and she was like, what's wrong? Like, is it gonna be okay? It's like, I just needed somebody else to tell me it was gonna be okay. Because like my internal dialogue is telling me keep going, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. But I'm like, but is it? Yeah. And fast forward to now, as I'm going through this next reinvention, there's a greater degree of that, like mustering up the gumption and putting it out there, which is unusual. It's almost like I didn't know any better back in the day. And now it's like I know too much. And to your point about consumer behavior and people's expectations and those things that have shifted for sure over the last 5 years, and definitely over the last, like, it's been a sharp shift in the last 5. It's more of a gradual shift in my experience over the last 10, where it's like I have this sensation now where it's like I have something to prove. Like the credibility, and so a coach said this to me. She's like, don't build credibility, be credible. I was like, okay. Yeah, I do. I think that there was like an element of like nativity where I just didn't know any better. And now I understand how people work to a certain degree. I know much more about myself and my own insecurities and my own imposter syndrome and those things that, to your point, appear that other people just have overnight. When in reality, actually another coach of mine and I talked a lot about this, that in reality, their overnight success probably took 20 some odd years too.
Absolutely.
We didn't
Absolutely.
see that part. And you know what, again, in real time, this just pinged me right now too, is that like that development of how I arrived right here, we didn't document that stuff then. We didn't, like, it wasn't the norm. Like, A, the technology didn't exist the
Yeah.
way it does now to actually execute it. And B, like that mindset of that. I was saying this to a client the other day. I was like, because she's going through like developing her socials and things like that and her brand persona. And I was like, I know it's weird. I think the same things. And like, people want to know what I'm doing every day. Really? That's the piece right now where in my own experience of myself is the next cut where it's like, yes, you have 25 years of credibility that I have built and experience that lends to insight into things that people don't have now, and I've said this for a long time too, if it can facilitate somebody else's journey being a little bit more easeful, then why not share it? Like, I'm not going to gatekeep it all. Like, what do I need it all for? Like, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing.
Right.
Yeah. So it's interesting. Like, again, in real time, it's interesting to think at just how like easy I just went about whatever I was going about. And now you would think it would be the reverse, but it's not.
It's not.
Maybe I should give it a go. Maybe I should just go show up places.
Just to kind of like connect what one of your coaches said. Don't build credibility, be credible. You've built it. You showing up is you being credible. That's it. Because the brand already on itself is you building that credibility, from the costumes for your colleagues, people you knew, to the little girls, to the studio. That was you building that credibility. You've done the work, Stacey.
Thank you.
You've done the work. It's just basically showing up and say, hey, this is Stacey G, just being Stacey G, and this is it. And
Yeah.
that is you being credible without doing too much about it. You're just showing up as your authentic self. And that is what I think that is what people are longing to see in a world of reality TV where it is called reality, but a lot of those things are scripted.
For sure.
Life is scripted. That is why I have my show the way that I have my show. We're not scripted. We just go off the cuff because that is how you get to know people. That's how you get to have real conversation in real time. So no questions ahead of time. Let's just talk, right? Person to person, journey to journey, entrepreneur to entrepreneur, human to human, right? Because the people listening to us that either hesitant about their journey, not sure, they don't have that inner compass of why now. The rule followers, no is no. Okay, no questions asked, right?
Yeah.
So that is basically what your coach said, being credible. Because we get so wound up in trying to be with the times. And I'm speaking to myself and saying this.
Totally.
We get so wound up into, okay, I have to do this. And there are people hungry for what we know. There are people hungry to just sip from the knowledge we're so willing to give. But because we are so caught up in the process of how we deliver what we give, we don't give. So that is just that connection with Don't build credibility. You've done that. You've already done that. Be credible. Show up. Be you. Be yourself. Yes, you may not think people want to see you every day doing everyday stuff that to you sounds mundane, but we actually want to see it. Your mundane is a lesson to me. Your mundane is a skill check for me, right? I'm seeing that blue ruffle dress in the back, and it looks really cute. Maybe I'm just working on getting tools together to ruffle just like that. And you're just basically being Stacey, doing this thing and showing, you're not really in the mood to teach. Ever, you're just putting something together. I'm like, oh my goodness, I never thought about doing it like that. Maybe I need to layer it. Maybe I need to cut different lengths so that I can have that cascade. You just never know who's looking to learn something new, a new technique. So look at me preaching to you, Stacey.
No,
So yeah, just, I think we get too sucked into doing things a certain way or doing things the right way or doing things whatever. Also talking about this journey, post COVID, and COVID was an awakening for you in so many ways. I was talking last week.
Yeah.
Both personal and business. And then something that you said to me that was very profound that I was looking forward to us having that conversation on this call. And you also mentioned it. You said, I don't know if I was pretending or I didn't want to know the things that I know now about myself. A lot of us, visiting things that are uncomfortable is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Call a spade a spade. Call a spade a spade. So we rather cover in a beautiful lace and pretend that it's not there so we can deal with whatever and move on. Why did you not turn and run away when you had an opportunity to confront that side of you or those emotions that you covered up so beautifully and basically ignored all these years, but they still had an impact? Why was that not a point of, no, my life has been great covering this up. I'd rather keep it covered up and move on. Why did you have the courage to stop and say, no, thank you for confronting me. I want to uncover this. I want to work through this.
It's a really great question. Because just so much comes like downloading into my mind. A couple of things. I can say this now. Had you asked me this question like in that moment, my answer probably wouldn't have been the same.
Right.
And what I know now is that my life wasn't that great. I like the lens in which I was looking through it, I was like, yeah, like this is okay. And I was willing to make it what I was pretending it was already. But I didn't know that I was in that kind of cycle until I was introduced to a leadership training program based in emotional intelligence. And there was a very pivotal moment during that training that we went through a particular exercise. And at the end of the exercise, they asked each person what they were experiencing. And I remember I was the last person to go. And I was like sobbing, like ugly crying, like snot, like things coming out of orifices that you probably don't want to do in front of however many other strangers were there. The only word that kept running through my head was what I'm experiencing right now is activation. And I think that was on it was a 4-day program and it was the Saturday night. And so Sunday morning, they launched into like what was next. And like, I remember I was on the phone with my coach, like before they even announced, like, I was like, whatever is next, like sign me up. Like, I don't care how I'm going to, like I was broke. I was like, I don't care how we're making it. I don't even know how we're going to do this. Like I got into that same space again, where it was like, I know that this is like something inside of me is telling me that this is where I get to go for whatever is next. I don't know what's next. But look, I thought I knew what was next. I had all the stories made up about what was next. And so then I continued that journey and I started to see the results around me. You know what? It wasn't even about changing who I am. And like to your point about like being the credibility or being authentically myself in this space is that it was releasing and uncovering all of the shit that I'd picked up along the way whilst trying to navigate all of the stuff that like showed up along the way. And showed up to the point where you don't even realize that you're holding all of it. And whether that was personal or business and or how those two things become so entangled as a solopreneur. And I'm sure even C-suite CEOs and stuff are in that similar, it probably just looks a little different, but like the intimate relationship of sorts that you don't even realize that, well, in my experience, anyways, you don't even realize that you're in until you start pulling it apart. I realized I was alive. I was living to work versus working to live. And it was funny because one of the major motivations, I was like, the key piece for what was next in the program. And I was like, this would be amazing for my business. As I got into it and I started again to recognize that this was actually about me. And yes, of course it has benefited my business 100%, but only because I have shifted. And yeah, a couple of pieces. Like I just started like literally physically feeling different. And then I started to see the results that I was starting to create in my life and being able to see again that kind of like that long-term vision that I instinctually had been creating when I was younger. And that was like one of the biggest, the most impactful moment in addition to that exercise that night was recognizing that I had forgotten how to be inspired and how to run and to be motivated by the things that come so instinctually to me, like those possibilities and the childlike wonder and the what do you mean we can't do it, like that had somehow that had got, like I don't even know where it went, like it had just become dormant. I think again instinctually just like understood the value and the freedom that was available if I just continued to show up for myself, and the improvement in the relationships around me, my relationship with myself. When I just think back, I can still see myself standing there and I'm like, whoo, girl. Like, girl.
I mean, going through it takes bravery to go through that journey, and the snotting part definitely it happens, and just go with it. Whatever's flowing out, just let it go. I'm going to draw a parallel.
Sure.
I'm not sure if this is accurate, but I did see similar patterns in my own life. You were classically trained in dance, ballet, and all of these things are rule heavy, and we have a tendency to attach charities to our lives. Because you had to show up for ballet, it didn't matter if you were actively in pain. You had to grin through that pain and get things done. You automatically took those rules and applied it to your life. It didn't matter what was going on, breaking apart. You had to put on this facade to show up and do what you needed to do for work. Right? So we have a tendency, the same thing with criticism. If you're in an environment where you're constantly being criticized, you're never good enough. And for anybody listening, you are made perfect. You are perfect just the way you are.
Percent.
Right? Great. So now that's out of the way. When you are in an environment where you're constantly criticized, and you can never do anything right, or within a family dynamic where you're told you're different, you're nobody like the family, you're constantly being, reprimanded or being told, you're the black sheep or whatever words
Yeah.
that they use. There's a tendency to not be your authentic self and to pull that childhood wonder, that can-do attitude, pull that in for survival. So we do this for survival. It's not that we do it because we feel like beating ourselves down and dumbing ourselves down. You had to survive, Stacy. You had to survive in the hand that you were dealt. You had to survive and prove to yourself you could make this business successful. And in making this business successful, you can make any relationship successful, including the one that was breaking you apart, including the one that was not good for you. So when you step back and you recognize the pattern and you see how you lied to your own self, survival, not because of all lying to yourself, because you had to survive within the confines of what you were given. It is very profound. And once you flip that switch, there's usually not going back, because it opens a brand new portal to you, who you are, and, just how you see yourself. And you saw your business, but the universe has a different plan for you.
Totally. To your point, that was when the key piece was that I started to understand that I could choose it.
Yes.
But I still have those skills that you're talking about. And like, yes, they served me well. And they served me well in both realms. They served me well to get to that point that then I found myself in a situation where things were unhealthy. And then they also served me to keep me alive during that time. And then, cue this process where I'm like, right, I have access to that for anything. It doesn't have to be an unconscious choice. I can actually bring it to the forefront and choose it from my toolbox. And that was really a big game changer for me too. Yes, running on instinct has really served me well, but then it's a double-edged sword. So like bringing it back to choice, and one of my coaches and I talk a lot about this, that like You're at choice every moment of every day. And so bringing yourself there to like, okay, does this serve my vision? Does this serve where I want to go consciously?
Yeah.
Yes, great, let's go. No, all right, let's figure that out.
Like,
Why do I want to do it?
why do I want to do this when it doesn't serve me anywhere? And it takes that awareness of self for you to really point yourself in a trajectory and unapologetically live your life the way that benefits you, really. So yeah, a lot of us get to that point and there's no looking back. And some people get to that and they turn back and run because, again, it's uncomfortable, requires confrontation, and not everybody's built for confrontation. And especially confrontation of self is not easy. It is not easy at all. So let's talk about your business and where you are right now, especially in helping career people dress the part, or people dressing career people, to utilize emotional intelligence in selecting a wardrobe and having somebody show up at their most powerful. So get into that, please.
Yeah, for sure. Quite simply, your outside gets to match your inside. That's quite simply what the core of it is. Also that, there's a lot of like these unconscious driving conversations that we have with ourselves that you don't even realize are present until you pause and bring them to the forefront. And so in my experience, a lot of stylists and a lot of brand development and those sorts of things rely on trends and rely on, let's call it, traditional marketing and those sorts of things. And like, it's great, but it's not really my jam. And I don't believe that everybody doesn't have to subscribe to the same thing. And so really what we dive into is discovering who you are and how you want to communicate that out into the world, and in a way that you don't even have to like open your mouth. You walk in a room and your energy from inside all the way out is present, and it's aligned with who you know yourself to be. Not what corporate America thinks that a strong independent woman running whatever thing should look like. Whatever your identity is, then we express that on the outside. Because that's another core belief of mine, is that everybody gets to walk through this world fully expressed. And some people really like, they open their closet every morning and they hate getting dressed. And so like, why? What conversations run you every morning? And not only what conversation runs that, but what conversation has you choose to just do it anyways, and to put your own, like what you know to be true about yourself, put it aside and like go through the escalator of life, or whatever you want to call it. Like, what are those conversations? Let's get underneath it. To your point earlier, like, does it come back to a space where you were criticized for XYZ expression? Does it come back to that maybe you have been in corporate America for 25 years and were expected to show up in your beige khakis with your boat shoes and whatever stereotypical image is there. And now you've decided to migrate into a different space and you literally don't know who that is for you, it's really getting into those conversations and then developing it out. And like, again, like with our conversations around the forward facing, like media aspect to everybody's life. And so like, how does that align and how does that get to show up authentically? What does that messaging look like? And using the tools of, we do a lot of guided meditation and visualization. We do a ton of stepping out of your comfort zone. I have a client right now who, she's great. Like, we go through this process where she, puts different things together and she's like, great, I love it. But she hasn't left her house in it yet. Like, okay, awesome. Like,
She loves it in the closet.
Like, she loves it. Like, you love it in the mirror. And like, yes, step one, you've done it. And now you get to like go out in the world. And it's so like, 'cause, like, sometimes like I've been explaining what I'm up to people and they're like, how do these two things go together? And I'm like, well, like, here it is. Right. I love it. Cause it's like, yeah, like, we'll take this person as the example. Like, she's like loving it. And then the conversation kicks in when it's like, oh my God, I can't go out in this because so-and-so might say this, or like, the physical sensations that come up in my body it's too uncomfortable for me. So to your point about like even confronting whatever came up for me over that time, those things are present every day. They're just like so micro, and there's so much other stuff that we got to handle every day that it's like, for most people, it's like real low on the priority list until you find yourself in a space where either the unhappiness around
Mhm.
it, you're just like, screw it. Like, I'm tired of being sick and tired. So like, I'm going to do something about it. Or there's an opportunity in your life where you recognize that like, hey, I get to show up all of me. And I'll say this too, like, I'm not so naive that I can't admit that this exists. Yes, we do still judge people based on how they show up in their clothing or in their physicality. We do, unfortunately. And so let's set ourselves up to win by making those choices and showing up because we want to, not because it's expected of us. Have it show up in those ways from an empowered space versus showing up in a space in a way that you're expected to, but still feeling like you don't want to, or that you're not, or that you're showing up not as yourself, even though so you're already being judged. Wow. Or show up and shut the conversation down. Go.
I love it. I absolutely. So that's the problem with society in general. And unfortunately, we've been conditioned to operate in that way where we let the opinions of others cripple us.
Yeah.
Right. So, or it either cripples us or kind of elevates, which is very short term.
Sure.
You name it. From school, you're getting grades, you pass or you fail, you're good or bad, you're a great worker or you're not, and all this different reward and whatever systems, whatever you want to call them. But once you start operating from a point of not letting opinions have an impact on you, you're unstoppable. I put opinions and criticism in the same basket
Word.
because the opinions I have of myself and the criticism I have of myself and the compliment I have of myself is paramount. How am I showing up for myself every day? Where can I improve? Which is the criticism. If it's not constructive, you can keep it or you can give it. Either way, it's going in the same basket. I do not rely on other people's account or outlook of me to show up. And once that became a thing for me, it was at a very young age, but as an adult right now, I practice it endlessly. I don't like you, great. Good for you. I'm happy for you. I
Yeah.
woke up liking myself this morning. How's that? So that opinion, she loves it in the mirror. She loves the way it looks in the closet, but she's worried about what Bob, Stacy, and Steven will say at work. And who cares about Bob, Stacy, and Steven? Just show up. If you love it in the mirror, you love how it feels on you, show up. As long as you're not showing up in a halter top and yoga pants to a boardroom meeting, well,
Yeah.
if you're doing that, I mean,
Hey, like, if maybe, you know what I mean? Like, who knows?
don't let me, please, no judgment.
The key piece too, right? Like, who cares what, Tom, Dick, and
Right.
Harry, but also what is it about those opinions, to your point? Like, let's have that conversation.
Right.
That you're not like, the clothes aren't the band-aid. The clothes is the result of conversations, of the exercises, of like getting underneath and moving through so that your choices are free, like to your point, like they're for you and you're showing up in those spaces for you. You're not showing up to like, I don't even know what. Like, my favorite thing is like, people are like, well, where would I wear that? Wherever you want. There's no rules. Like, this is my whole thing where like the rules that have been traditionally in place, we don't have to follow them. You can if you want. I'm not saying don't. I'm just saying you have a choice and you get to create that choice and then act upon it from an empowered place. Period.
Yeah. We all have a choice, and I think your choice should be your choice. And it's great
100%.
that you're empowering people through something as people may think as minute as dressing really does impact how you show up in a place, workplace, event, whatever.
Yeah.
I went to a tech event recently, and a mutual of mine who was actually one of the organizers for the event. It was a tech week event. And I thought I was dressed down as dressed down could possibly be. I had black slacks, a leopard print top with a blazer, simple blazer. And I thought, I'm dressed down, but I'm still showing up. And when I showed up at his event, he looked at me, he's like, what are you running for office? So I'm like, yeah, no, but am I overdressed? I'm like, kind of, sort of. So again, and that's my showing up, attract a certain people to talk to me. And I was able to, confidently show up. as myself. Yes, there were people there in t-shirts, but there were other people that later on showed up in suits. And I'm like, hey, look, people showed up and presented themselves how they wanted to present. And he's a friend. So he picked on me. It's fine.
Where is it written that we all have to be the same? It's okay. Like, you want to wear a t-shirt? Go ahead.
That's the irony. He really wasn't wearing a t-shirt. He was wearing beautiful dress shoes, dress pants, button-down shirt, and a t-shirt over the t-shirt. You're not that casual. You're not as casual as you think. He just felt like saying something smart. So I think it's the moral of the story for me is just show up how you're going to show up, how you feel comfortable showing up. Dressing to obligation, it's not most people's things. And even within organization that there's a set uniform, people always find a way to customize their uniforms. And that should be okay. So if I'm showing up in company shirt, black slacks, gray slacks, whatever, if I can add a brooch or charm or whatever, just to customize and, flare up whatever I'm wearing, that's my way of styling it to my comfort, to feel good in it. So what you're doing is really incredible and really, really important. And I thank you for stepping into your genius, I would call it. I know when we first started talking, I'm like, what gap did you see? It's like I didn't see any gap initially. Little did you know you were preparing yourself to get into that gap, to see that gap. I love it. I love it. So, Stacey, as we wrap up our conversation, there's something I usually ask of my guests, to leave either a golden nugget or a few golden nuggets to our listening audience. So, to everybody listening to us today, what would you like to leave them with?
Oh, don't ever let anybody tell you no.
Yes.
Yeah, because maybe the no is the beginning to something. If you see it, it's possible. Then I don't know. There's a quote that goes with this, and I'm really bad at remembering quotes. So, but it's essentially that, like, if it wasn't possible, the idea wouldn't come into your mind. And so just because somebody else doesn't see it and replies with no doesn't discount whatever that vision is that you have, because it's meant for you on some level.
Yes.
Yeah.
I believe that wholeheartedly. And most no's are not a totality. They're just a diversion to where you need to go.
Yeah.
Most closed doors are not closed doors. They're really directing you to where you need to go. So if you were still with that dance company under that dance contract until, as I know of most dancers, they dance until their body gives out completely. Who knows where you would have been? But you needed to be redirected. You got that no, and here you are today. So it was a blessing in disguise. So most no's are not no's. And just because somebody says no does not mean you end it, you stop it. Look at it, examine it, is a redirection of some sort. So I love that. Never take no for an answer.
That's right.
That's it. Love it. I love it. So thank you everybody for listening. Thank you, Stacey, for being here. I'm very grateful for your time. I'm grateful that you exist in the world. I'm grateful that you leaned into your calling and you're using your ability to improve the lives of people around you. So grateful that you exist again and again and again. And thank you for being here. Thank you all for listening. Stacey, please, where can we find you? So for anybody who's listening who may want to have you coach them or learn from you or have you kind of like style design them, please, where can they find you?
Yeah. So the website is www.bystaceyg.com. It's Stacey with an E. And my Instagram is @by_the_Stacey_G. And those are the two easiest places to find me.
Right. Cool. And for anybody who did not get that in writing, we are going to include the links in the show notes. So you can just click in and get to her website and get to her Instagram and, see what you can learn and reach out to her. So if you find yourself in the fashion industry looking to pivot, this is somebody you can learn from. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for listening. Very grateful for you. Take good care of yourselves. All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to AVP59's podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. It really helps us out. We'd love to hear your thoughts and continue the discussion. So join us on social media or drop us a message. Until next time, keep exploring, stay curious, and keep pushing the boundaries of your world.